what happens when the second son, the spare, realizes his life is defined, well, entirely by the existence of the first?
It's a fascinating question.
It's not just a family dynamic, is it? It's the crushing weight of institutional expectation colliding with a really simple human desire for self-determination.
And that tension is really the heart of the matter. So today, we're embarking on something of a mission. We want you to discover a new, in-depth approach to book coverage with this extended summary.
Right.
Unlike our previous reviews, which offered a more focused analysis, this feature delivers a comprehensive overview. We're tracing where these problems began, exploring the key arguments, and looking at the real-world impact.
And we'd love to know what you think.
Absolutely. If you appreciate this expanded format, please let us know. Your feedback will help shape what we do in the future.
So we are plunging into Spare, Prince Harry's first-person memoir, published back in January 2023. And for this, you're experiencing a unique two-host conversation, powered by Google's Notebook LM for deeper, more dynamic book summaries.
And this really isn't the stuffy royal biography you might expect.
Not at all. It's raw, it's immediate, and the fact that Harry narrates the audiobook himself just amplifies that. The journey he describes is this ultimate internal conflict, being the spare to the heir, his brother William.
And the long, very fraught path from life inside palace walls to a new, deliberately public existence in North America.
A very public existence.
What's so interesting isn't just the content, it's the structure. The book doesn't follow a straight line at all. It opens right in the thick of it.
That tense family meeting.
A deeply tense meeting where they're discussing stepping back from duties. And by starting at that breaking point, the book immediately loops back to trace all the conflicts, emotional, institutional, across his childhood, his military service, and his marriage that made that final rupture almost inevitable.
It's set up like a forensic examination.
Exactly. All designed to answer one question. How did we get here?
Okay, let's unpack that childhood because the backdrop is just so crucial. It's a world of palaces, country estates, rigid rituals.
And constant security, all under the unforgiving microscope of the global media.
And that environment, already so intense, was just shattered by the defining event of his life. His mother Diana's death in 1997.
That trauma is the emotional bedrock for everything that follows. I mean, he recalls the bizarre dissonance of the public mourning, the sea of flowers, the crowds.
All while he was just a child.
Just a child trying to process a personal tragedy. He stresses the intense presence of the paparazzi at every single stage of his grief, even recounting episodes where he felt he had to revisit the sites in Paris connected to the crash.
Looking for a closure he never found.
Exactly. And the memoir makes it crystal clear. He believes the aggressive behavior of the paparazzi directly contributed to the accident. That level of trauma doesn't just fade, it shapes you.
And when you layer that deep, unaddressed grief onto the pressure of being the spare, well, you get the struggles of his youth.
For sure. The memoir describes academic difficulties, a profound feeling of being separate, not just from classmates, but from the royal expectations placed on him.
It raises that question. If your identity is only defined in relation to someone else, the heir, how do you find any meaning for yourself?
And that lack of independent identity so often leads to attempts to feel something. Or maybe nothing at all. The book details his attempts at self-medication.
During adolescence, his early 20s.
Right. He openly discusses experimenting with alcohol and drugs, including cocaine use starting around 17, and later taking psychedelic mushrooms at a party. But he doesn't frame these as just hedonism.
No, it's portrayed as an attempt to feel different.
Or just to numb the constant background noise from his mother's death and his role in the institution.
Which brings us directly to those major, often reckless public controversies.
The ones that defined his early adulthood. Most infamously, wearing a Nazi uniform to a costume party. It's easy to just dismiss that as a stupid, youthful mistake, but
He adds a detail that completely changes it.
he does. He claims that William and Kate were actually involved in choosing the costume and even encouraged it.
Which is a serious indictment of the culture around him.
It's a critical detail. It suggests that while Harry took the public fallout, the decision wasn't made in a vacuum. It paints a picture where the people closest to him were complicit, or at least failed to provide any guardrails.
And the cycle is established. Harry acts out. The press explodes.
And the family dynamic becomes toxic because of leaks from inside royal circles, which just fuels more public tension and his own alienation. The narrative argues the scandal machine was often running on fuel provided internally.
That machine ultimately drives him to seek a completely different reality. He
Ah.
transitions very sharply into the military.
He details his training at Sandhurst and what he describes as this overwhelming desire for real combat service, a world where being a prince was secondary to being a soldier. The military offered him the clear definition and purpose that palace life never could.
He served 2 tours in Afghanistan.
Yes, the first as a forward air controller was dramatically cut short after the media revealed his location, a huge security risk.
He had to be extracted.
He did, but he later returned as an Apache helicopter pilot. And what he emphasizes is the transformative power of that experience. The routines, the missions, the genuine camaraderie with fellow soldiers. It offered him a strong sense of self, far from the palace hierarchy.
And if we look at this through that core theme, the contrast between a soldier's life and a prince's life couldn't be starker. It just highlights the tragedy of the whole heir-spare dynamic.
Exactly. William is the elder heir. His future is fused to the monarchy itself. Harry details how their relationship went from childhood closeness to, well, to distance, competition, and these profound arguments.
Mostly over media narratives.
Yes. He describes specific instances where William seemed more concerned with the palace's image than with their brotherly bond. And this distance was amplified as William's role solidified, and Harry just kept struggling against his secondary designation.
So what about their father, King Charles?
Yeah.
How did he handle that rivalry? The book paints a complex picture.
It does. A devoted father, but one who was emotionally reserved, deeply shaped by his own harsh, lonely upbringing.
There are some really telling details.
Very revealing. Harry describes his father's attachment to a battered childhood teddy bear symbol, the memoir suggests, of a profound need for comfort.
And Charles's own difficult experiences at Gordonston School are mentioned.
Right, showing that his emotional reservation was likely a product of his own institutional trauma. It humanizes him, portraying him not just as the king, but as a man struggling with his own legacy of isolation.
This pattern of prioritizing the institution over emotion is explored even further with Camilla.
Yes, the book claims that Harry and William were initially resistant to their father marrying her. And while they eventually accepted her, the memoir introduces a powerful internal conflict over who controlled the public narrative.
This is where the media critique gets really sharp.
It does. Crucially, the memoir alleges that some members of Camilla's communication staff engaged in media strategies designed to benefit her public image, often at the expense of negative stories about others.
Including Harry and, later, Meghan.
Exactly. This detail provides an internal villain, suggesting that media attacks Harry faced weren't just external tabloid aggression, but were sometimes strategically coordinated from within the family's own competing households.
That pattern of media manipulation seems like the perfect setup for what happened when Harry introduced Meghan Markle.
The biggest change in his life. The book details how they met, the rapid progression of their relationship, and her introduction to the convoluted world of royal life. The scrutiny she faced was immediate.
And racialized. And exponentially more intense than anything he had experienced.
Let's drill down into those pressures because Harry recounts two types of hostility: the blatant racism and misogyny in the press, alongside this mounting cold tension from within palace staff and even some family members.
He details specific incidents.
Like the disagreements around the wedding, including that high-profile dispute involving Catherine and the bridesmaid dress. These internal details, once they were leaked, fed into press narratives portraying Meghan as difficult or demanding.
At about this midpoint, for those looking for more insight into literary structure and analysis, you should know about Mindful Moments.
That's our YouTube channel. It offers AI book analysis, summaries, and critiques.
It's really aimed at inspiring reflection and rational thought. And it's incredibly valuable for aspiring authors looking to understand narrative structure.
So, moving back to the conflict, Harry describes feeling trapped, unable to protect his wife from hostility coming from both outside and inside the gates.
And this frustration over the negative coverage, the competing PR tactics between the households, it becomes an internal war over public perception. The narrative just leans so heavily on press clippings, on headlines.
And that tension famously boiled over into the personal realm. The book includes its most dramatic allegation, a physical confrontation where William allegedly pushed him during a heated dispute about Meghan,
He claims he saw backwards, landing on a dog bowl that broke.
leaving a cut on his back. That scene isn't just about a fight. It symbolically represents the total violent breakdown of the spare air structure. It's the final loss of that childhood relationship.
Throughout this final period, the memoir uses these small, intimate details to reinforce Harry's sense of displacement.
It really does. He recounts arriving at Clarence's house and noticing Camilla had already converted his old bedroom into a dressing room.
A small thing, but so telling. A symbol of his shifting status within the family home.
And despite the chaos, he consistently references his charitable work like Sent a Bail and Wellchild as crucial anchors during this time. They represented a form of public service he felt was authentic, unconnected to the toxic media cycle.
But ultimately, the focus of the book shifts entirely to the future. It concludes by summarizing that series of difficult meetings at various royal estates.
The whole process around stepping back, it recounts them exploring alternative arrangements, like a half-in, half-out role. But in the end, the decision was made to leave the UK entirely.
To relocate to North America. The ultimate goal, as he presents it, was non-negotiable, prioritizing his family's mental well-being and security.
And if we synthesize the themes here, it's a heavy mix. Family loyalty destroyed by institutional structure, chronic grief, mental health, the clash between individual happiness and institutional demands.
And importantly, the challenge of a colonial-era monarchy in a modern, multiracial, global media society.
The reaction to the book just confirms the power of that story. It's a monumental success.
Over 6 million copies sold worldwide. It set a Guinness World Record as the fastest-selling nonfiction book of all time.
And it generated massive public debate because of its detailed accounts of private conversations and its pointed critique of the relationship between the palace and the media.
A relationship, Harry argues, is fundamentally corrupting.
So considering those detailed accounts, the leaks, the competing media strategies, the allegations of narrative control, what does this book ultimately suggest about the true mechanisms of influence operating behind the public facade of monarchy?
That's a provocative question to sit with.
Click the link in the show notes for the in-depth book critique. Subscribe to this deep dive, share this, consider purchasing the book via the link, and keep thinking rationally.
See the many genre-based book podcasts.